In the hardest moment of their lives, Michael abandons his family upon discovering that his newborn son has a disability. But will he live forever with the weight of that regret? Michael stood frozen in the sterile hospital room, the hum of machinery and the faint smell of antiseptic swirling around him. In his arms, he cradled his newborn son, Noah, a tiny fragile being wrapped snugly in a soft hospital blanket. The soft, cooing sounds emanating from the baby filled the room, contrasting sharply with the storm brewing within Michael's heart. Beside him, Sarah was radiant, her face aglow with joy as she gazed at their son. Her hair fell in loose curls around her shoulders, framing her face in a way that made her look almost ethereal. "Isn't he perfect?" Sarah asked, her voice a melody of hope and love. She reached out, gently touching Noah's cheek with her fingertips, as if trying to absorb every detail of this moment. Michael forced a smile, but as he glanced at the doctor, standing quietly at the foot of the bed, concern etched deep into the man's features, his heart sank. The doctor cleared his throat, capturing both parents' attention. "Michael, Sarah, can we talk for a moment?" The words felt heavy, laden with unspoken implications. Sarah's smile faltered slightly, and she looked between Michael and the doctor, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "Of course," Sarah said, her voice steady but tinged with apprehension. Michael nodded, setting Noah gently back into his crib, his heart hammering against his chest. As they followed the doctor into the small consultation room, Michael's mind raced, thoughts spiraling into dark corners he didn't want to explore. The doctor closed the door behind them, and the room felt suffocatingly small. "Please sit down," the doctor instructed, gesturing toward the chairs. Sarah sat first, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, while Michael remained standing, his body tense. "Michael, Sarah," the doctor began, his voice calm but serious, "I want to discuss some findings regarding Noah." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "We've conducted some routine assessments, and I need to inform you that Noah has been diagnosed with a disability." The words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. The world around him blurred, and he struggled to process what the doctor was saying. He glanced at Sarah, whose eyes widened, a mixture of confusion and fear flickering across her face. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "What kind of disability?" The doctor took a deep breath, his gaze steady as he explained. "Noah has a condition that will affect his development. It's hard to predict the exact challenges he will face, but he will require specialized care and support." Michael's heart raced as panic set in. Questions flooded his mind, questions he didn't want to confront. Would he be able to handle this? Did he have what it took to be a father to a child like Noah? The thought felt like a heavy weight pressing down on him, suffocating his spirit. "Isn't there something we can do?" Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. The doctor took another moment before responding. "There are therapies and support systems available, and many families have successfully navigated similar situations. But it will be a long and challenging journey." Michael felt the walls closing in. He turned away, his mind racing with fear and uncertainty. He couldn't bear to look at Sarah, to see the hurt in her eyes. He needed air, needed to escape this reality that felt too heavy to bear. Without a word, he slipped out of the room, leaving Sarah and the doctor behind. He walked briskly down the sterile hallway, the bright fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Each step felt like a retreat, a desperate attempt to distance himself from the weight of responsibility that was now firmly placed on his shoulders. Once in the waiting room, he sank into a chair, his head in his hands. The noise of the hospital faded away, and all he could hear was the rapid thud of his heart. It was as if time stood still, and he was trapped in a moment that he couldn't escape. "Hey, man, you okay?" A familiar voice broke through the haze. It was Jake, his lifelong friend, who had been waiting anxiously in the corner. He approached Michael, concern etched across his face. "Not really," Michael admitted, his voice shaky. Jake sat down beside him, leaning in. "What happened? Did they say something about Sarah or the baby?" Michael took a deep breath, trying to gather the fragmented thoughts swirling in his mind. "It's Noah. He has a disability," he said, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. Jake's expression shifted from concern to understanding. "Oh man, I'm so sorry. That's a lot to take in." "I don't know if I can do this, Jake," Michael whispered, the vulnerability spilling out. "What if I'm not cut out to be a father? What if I can't give him what he needs?" Jake placed a reassuring hand on Michael's shoulder. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just take it one step at a time. It's not that simple, Michael replied, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. What if I fail him? I mean, he's going to need so much more than I can give. I don't even know how to handle this. Michael, you're not alone in this. Sarah is there, and she'll need you. You can't just walk away, Jake urged, his voice firm. Michael's mind raced as he thought about Sarah, her unwavering love and strength. But alongside that thought came the irrational fear that gripped him. A fear that he might be a burden rather than a support. As the minutes ticked by, the weight of his indecision hung heavy in the air. I don't know if I can face it, he finally admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Jake regarded him with compassion. You have to face it, Michael. You have a family now. Noah needs you, and so does Sarah. You can't just turn your back on them. Michael nodded slowly, the reality of Jake's words crashing down on him, but deep down, a part of him felt an overwhelming urge to flee, to escape the life that now seemed so daunting. As the hours passed, Michael found himself staring at the hospital exit, his heart torn. He thought of Noah, that tiny hand wrapped around his finger, and the joy etched on Sarah's face. But the fear of the unknown loomed larger than the love he felt. The following day, Michael sat in his dimly lit apartment, the shadows stretching across the walls like dark memories. He hadn't returned to the hospital. Instead, he had spent the night wrestling with his thoughts, replaying the moment in the hospital room over and over in his mind. He picked up a pen and a piece of paper, the blank space taunting him. As he began to write, the words flowed with a painful honesty. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can do this. I need time to think. He folded the note carefully, his hands trembling as he contemplated the implications of his actions. He packed a small bag, filling it with essentials, but as he placed Noah's blanket inside, tears filled his eyes. I'm sorry, little man, he murmured, his heart breaking as he realized he was choosing to walk away from everything he had ever wanted. With the note clutched tightly in his hand, he left his apartment, the door closing softly behind him, sealing away the life he was about to abandon. As he stepped out into the world, the weight of his decision hung heavily on his shoulders. Each step felt like a betrayal, a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life, and yet the fear of facing the unknown felt equally unbearable. With every passing moment, Michael knew that he was carving a path filled with regret, one he might never be able to return from. 5 years had passed since Michael's life took a turn he never anticipated. He now inhabited a small, dimly lit apartment that reeked of stale takeout and loneliness. The walls were adorned with cheap prints of landscapes, a stark contrast to the vibrant life he had once shared with Sarah and their newborn son, Noah. The ticking clock on the wall became a constant reminder of the time that slipped away, echoing the decisions he had made in haste. Michael sat on his worn-out couch, staring blankly at the television, though he could hardly recall what show was playing. His mind was elsewhere, drifting into memories he tried to suppress. He often thought about Sarah, the way she laughed, the warmth of her smile when she held Noah. Yet every time those thoughts crept in, he shoved them away, focusing instead on the mundane tasks of his life. The job at the local hardware store paid the bills, but it was far from fulfilling. He felt like a ghost in his own life, moving through the motions without really living. Hey, Mike, you still there? Jake's voice broke through Michael's reverie, pulling him back to the present. Yeah, just lost in thought, Michael replied, forcing a smile that Jake couldn't see through the phone. Lost in thought or lost in regret? You know you can't keep avoiding it forever, right? Jake's tone was gentle but firm. Michael sighed, leaning back against the couch. I know. I just don't know what to say. It's been so long. They probably hate me. Maybe they don't. Maybe they've just moved on, Jake suggested, his voice softening. You should reach out. You've got to face this man. You're not the same person who left. Michael heard the sincerity in his friend's words, and for a moment he entertained the idea of reaching out to Sarah, but the fear of rejection loomed larger than the hope of reconciliation. Instead, he changed the subject, discussing the latest sports game, but the conversation felt hollow, just like his life. Meanwhile, across town, Sarah was busy with the daily routine of single motherhood. In her modest home, she filled every moment with laughter and love for Noah, who was now a spirited 5-year-old with a determination that often left her in awe. She had attended countless therapy sessions, learning to navigate the challenges that came with raising a child with a disability. Each session was a small step towards healing, but the scars of abandonment ran deep. Mom, look, I did it! Noah's voice rang through the house, filled with excitement. He burst into the living room, his eyes sparkling as he held up a colorful drawing. The paper was covered in bold strokes of red and blue, a crude interpretation of the sun and a house. "That's amazing, Noah. You've captured the sun perfectly," Sarah exclaimed, her heart swelling with pride. She knelt down to his level, examining the artwork closely. "What's this one here?" "That's us, and that's the sun shining on our house," he explained, beaming with pride. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. You're going to be an artist one day," she encouraged, wrapping her arms around him in a warm hug. Noah giggled, reveling in the attention. "Can we hang it on the fridge?" "Of course, it deserves a special place," Sarah replied, standing up to find a magnet. As she walked to the kitchen, she couldn't shake the lingering thoughts of Michael. She often wondered if he thought about them, if he regretted leaving, but the bitterness she felt was always quick to surface. She had fought hard to create a life filled with love for Noah, but the shadow of Michael's absence loomed over them both. Later that week, during one of her therapy sessions, Sarah shared her feelings with Dr. Miller, who listened intently. "I still think about him sometimes. I hate that I do, but I can't help it. It's like a ghost that won't go away." Dr. Miller nodded, understanding the weight of Sarah's emotions. "It's normal to feel that way. You shared a life together, and he was a part of your dreams. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, but it means finding a way to live with those memories. I just don't want Noah to feel abandoned like I did," Sarah confessed, her voice trembling. "He deserves so much more than what Michael gave him." "You're doing a wonderful job, Sarah. Focus on the love you give Noah every day. That's what matters," Dr. Miller reassured her. As the weeks went by, Noah continued to thrive, surprising everyone with his resilience. He learned to walk independently, mastering the use of a walker that had once seemed like a daunting challenge. Every small victory was celebrated with joy, and Sarah was determined to shower him with encouragement. One afternoon, as they were leaving a therapy session, Noah turned to Sarah and said, "Mom, I want to show my drawing to everyone at school. I want them to see how strong I am." "You are so strong, Noah. I'm proud of you for wanting to share your art. Let's do it," Sarah replied, feeling a mix of pride and trepidation. The thought of other children's reactions made her anxious, but Noah's determination fueled her courage. The next day, Noah stood in front of his class, his heart racing with excitement as he held up his drawing. "This is my house and my mom, and the sun is shining." The children clapped and cheered, their laughter filling the room. Sarah watched from the doorway, tears welling in her eyes. In that moment, she realized that despite the challenges, Noah was blossoming into a remarkable young boy, unafraid to shine in a world that often overlooked differences. Back at his apartment, Michael found himself scrolling through social media during a rare moment of quiet. As he absent-mindedly flipped through photos, something caught his eye, a page dedicated to Noah's achievements. The header read, "Noah's Journey, a Beacon of Hope." His heart raced as he clicked on the page, revealing a collection of photos showcasing Noah's progress from therapy sessions to school performances. Michael's breath hitched as he saw a video of Noah reciting a poem about resilience, his tiny voice filled with passion. The comments flooded in, praising Noah's spirit and strength, and for the first time in years, Michael felt a flicker of pride. His son was thriving, inspiring others, and he was not there to witness it. The realization settled heavily in his chest, a mix of joy for Noah and a crushing wave of regret for his absence. Tears blurred his vision as he continued to watch the videos, each one a reminder of the life he had walked away from. He felt a longing to reach out, to tell Noah how proud he was, but he also knew that the bridge he had burned was not easily rebuilt. "Why didn't I stay?" he muttered to himself, the weight of his choices crushing him. The pang of guilt twisted painfully in his heart as he thought of Sarah raising Noah alone, facing every challenge head-on without him. With trembling hands, he closed his laptop, his mind racing with thoughts. How could he even begin to make amends? The thought of facing Sarah after all this time felt insurmountable, yet the pull to reconnect with Noah grew stronger. The world outside his window became a blur as he wrestled with the decision that could change the course of his life once more. As night fell, Michael sat in silence, the shadows of his past closing in around him. The ticking clock continued its relentless march, and he knew he had to confront the ghosts that haunted him for the sake of the son he had abandoned and the family he had left behind. Michael sat on the edge of his bed, the weight of his thoughts pressing down on him like a heavy fog. He could feel the pulse of his heart in his throat as he picked up his phone, staring at the screen, contemplating the words he wanted to say. It had been years since he last saw Sarah and Noah, but the images of their lives, their struggles, and their triumphs had begun to seep into his consciousness through the digital window of social media. The thought of reaching out filled him with an overwhelming mix of hope and dread. "Hey man, you okay?" Jake's voice broke through Michael's reverie, pulling him back to the present. They had been friends for years, but lately their conversations had revolved more around Michael's fears and regrets than anything else. "Not really," Michael admitted, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I think I need to talk to Sarah and Noah. I can't keep avoiding it." Jake raised an eyebrow, concern etched on his face. "You sure that's a good idea? It's been a long time. You left them, Mike. There's a lot of hurt there." "I know," Michael sighed, his voice heavy with remorse. "But I've been watching Noah grow up online, and it's like, I can't ignore them anymore. I need to see how they are. I need to make things right, or at least try." Jake leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "What do you think you can say? You can't just show up and expect everything to be okay. You hurt them, man. You can't just undo that." A silence hung in the air, thick with unspoken words. Michael felt the familiar knot of guilt tighten in his stomach. "I have to try, Jake. I've been living with this regret for far too long. I want to know Noah. I want to be part of their lives, even if they don't want me. Just be prepared for the backlash, all right? It won't be easy." Jake's tone softened, but the warning lingered. Michael nodded, determination settling in his chest like a stone. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but the thought of staying away any longer was unbearable. He needed to face the consequences of his actions. He needed to confront the ghosts of his past. Meanwhile, Sarah stood at the community center, a sea of faces surrounding her as she watched Noah accept his award. His small frame glowed with pride, and the applause that echoed through the room surged like a wave of warmth. It was a moment she had dreamed of, a moment where her son's bravery was recognized, where his triumphs were celebrated. "Way to go, buddy," she called out, her voice cutting through the noise. Noah turned, his face lighting up as he spotted her in the crowd. He waved enthusiastically, his eyes sparkling with joy. "Thanks, Mom," he shouted back, the sincerity in his voice wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. The crowd cheered again as Noah took his place at the podium, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the microphone. "I want to thank everyone for believing in me," he began, his voice steady despite the nervousness that flickered in his eyes. "I know that sometimes things are hard, but if you just keep trying, you can do anything." Tears brimmed in Sarah's eyes, pride swelling in her heart. She had worked tirelessly to instill in Noah the belief that he could overcome any obstacle, and here he was, living proof of that mantra. The applause grew louder, echoing through the hall as Noah finished his speech, a radiant smile plastered across his face. As the event continued, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that her life had become a whirlwind of challenges and victories. She had grown accustomed to the stares, the whispers, and the occasional praise for being a strong, single mother. But the path had never been easy, and she carried the weight of her son's struggles like armor, fiercely protective of his spirit. Michael stood in the shadows of the community center, his heart racing as he watched the scene unfold. He had arrived just in time to witness the culmination of everything he had abandoned. The sight of Noah, full of life and confidence, struck him with a sudden realization he had missed so much. His breath caught in his throat as he stepped closer, the crowd still cheering for Noah. The boy was surrounded by classmates, laughing and celebrating as if they had just conquered the world together. Michael felt a pang of longing, a deep desire to be a part of that joy, to share in the moments he had forfeited. "Mom, look at me!" Noah shouted, throwing his arms in the air as if he were claiming victory over the very challenges he had faced. The joy in his voice echoed through Michael, a bittersweet reminder of the connection he had severed. As the applause began to fade, the crowd dispersed, and Sarah beamed with pride, enveloping Noah in a warm embrace. Michael's heart twisted painfully in his chest, recognizing the love that radiated from the two of them, a bond he had chosen to break. He stepped back, uncertainty creeping in. What would he even say to them? He had spent years dodging the consequences of his choices, and now, standing at the precipice of a decision, he was terrified. But the fire within him ignited. He could not let fear dictate his actions any longer. "Michael." Jake's voice cut through the haze of his thoughts as he approached from behind. "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be lurking in the shadows." Michael turned, his expression resolute. I'm going to talk to them, Jake. I have to face this. Jake glanced toward Sarah and Noah, who were still lost in their own world. He could see the tension in Michael's shoulders and recognized the resolve in his eyes. Just remember, it won't be easy. They might not want to hear what you have to say. I know, Michael replied, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. But I have to try. I owe them that much. With that, Michael took a deep breath and stepped forward, crossing the threshold from the shadows into the light. Each step felt heavy, filled with the weight of the past, but he pushed through, driven by a desperate need for redemption. Sarah, he called out, his voice trembling slightly as he approached. Her head snapped toward him, surprise flashing across her features. The warmth of pride that had enveloped her moments ago faded, replaced by a coldness that cut straight through the air. Michael, she said cautiously, her tone guarded. Noah turned, his expression shifting from joy to confusion as he took in the sight of the man he had never met. Who's that, Mom? He asked, his innocent curiosity piercing through the tension. Michael swallowed hard, the reality of the moment crashing down on him. I'm your father, Noah, he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's eyes narrowed, a fierce protectiveness igniting within her. You couldn't have cared less about that title 5 years ago, she shot back, her voice laced with hurt and anger. What do you want now? The air crackled with tension, and Michael felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him. I want to make things right, he replied, his sincerity echoing in the space between them. I want to be part of your lives. I've missed so much, and I regret leaving. I'm sorry. Noah looked between them, confusion etching deeper lines across his young face. But why did you leave? He asked, the innocence in his voice making Michael's heart ache. I was scared, Michael admitted, his voice cracking. I didn't know how to be a father to someone with challenges. I was selfish, but I've thought about you every day since. Sarah stepped closer, her eyes blazing with a mix of emotions. You think saying sorry is enough? You think you can just walk back into our lives after all this time? Michael felt the sting of her words, but he stood his ground. I know I can't erase the past, but I want to be here for you and Noah. I want to learn how to be a father. Please give me a chance. Silence enveloped them, and the weight of Michael's plea hung in the air, fragile and uncertain. Noah shifted nervously, glancing between his mother and the stranger before him, unable to grasp the gravity of the situation. Michael stood at the edge of the community event, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. The vibrant colors of balloons and the laughter of children filled the air, but all he could focus on was Noah. He watched from a distance as his son interacted with other kids, a bright smile lighting up his face. The way he moved, with a confidence that Michael never thought possible, sent a rush of mixed emotions through him, pride, guilt, and a deep-seated regret that gnawed at his insides. Look at him, Michael whispered to himself, unable to tear his gaze away. Noah was no longer the fragile newborn he had abandoned. He was a spirited 5-year-old, full of life and joy. The other children surrounded him, laughing and playing, and for a moment Michael felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps he could still be a part of Noah's life. But the thought was quickly overshadowed by the memories of the day he had left, the fear that had gripped him so tightly. What are you doing here? A voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and filled with disbelief. It was Sarah, her eyes wide with shock, a mix of anger and hurt swirling within them. Michael's heart raced, caught between the urge to run away and the desire to explain himself. He stammered, struggling to find the right words. I wanted to see Noah. See him? After all these years? Sarah's voice rose, drawing the attention of a few nearby parents. You have some nerve showing up now. I know I messed up, Sarah. I know I hurt you both, but please just let me talk to him. Michael pleaded, desperation creeping into his tone. Sarah crossed her arms, her expression hardening. You think you can just waltz back into our lives? You have no idea what we've gone through, what I've gone through raising him alone. We didn't need you then, and we certainly don't need you now. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. Michael felt the weight of his decisions bear down on him, the shame flooding his veins. I didn't come here to hurt you, he said quietly, his eyes pleading for understanding. I came to see my son. I want to be part of his life. I want to make things right. Make things right? Sarah scoffed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You think showing up at a community event makes everything okay? You left us when we needed you the most. You abandoned your family, Michael. Do you even realize the impact your choices have had on Noah? The mention of Noah's name stung. I do. I see him now, and he's amazing. I'm so proud of him, he responded, his voice rising slightly, fueled by the mixture of anger and regret. I've followed his journey from afar. I've seen him grow, and I regret every single day I wasn't there for him. Pride doesn't fix broken families, Sarah shot back, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling within her. He's doing well because I fought for him. I poured everything I had into making sure he had the best life possible. You don't get to take credit for that just because you feel guilty. Michael's face fell, the truth of her words hitting him hard. I know I don't deserve anything, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I just want a chance to know him, to be a part of his life if he'll have me. Sarah's expression softened, but only slightly. He doesn't even know who you are. You think it's that easy just to walk back in and be his dad? It's not that simple. I'm willing to work for it, he replied earnestly, stepping a little closer. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust and his. I want to help him, support him, be there for him. Noah is my priority, Sarah declared firmly, her gaze unwavering. If he doesn't want to see you, then it doesn't matter what you want. I won't put him in a position to get hurt again. Michael felt a pang of despair. I understand, but I need to meet him. I need him to know he has a father who loves him no matter what. For a brief moment, silence enveloped them. The joyous sounds of the event faded into the background as they stood there, locked in a battle of wills. Sarah's eyes flickered with uncertainty, and Michael could sense the turmoil within her. You think love is enough? She finally asked, her voice softer but still edged with pain. You think just saying you love him makes up for the years you lost? Do you even know what he's been through? I know he's faced challenges, Michael said, his heart aching. I've seen the videos, the pictures. I've watched him grow strong and resilient. I want to be there to support him in any way I can. And how do I know you won't just disappear again? Sarah countered, her voice thick with emotion. You don't get to just show up when it's convenient for you. I can't change the past, he said, frustration creeping into his tone, but I want to change the future. I'm here to stay this time, if you'll let me. No. Sarah shook her head firmly, her posture resolute. You don't get to decide that. You left, Michael. You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences. The words struck him hard, reverberating in his mind. He had known this confrontation would be difficult, but he hadn't expected the rawness of her pain to hit him so deeply. Her anger was justified, and he bore the weight of the shame he had carried for years. I just want a chance, he repeated, desperation creeping into his voice, to show him that I can be there for him, that I can be a better father. Sarah took a deep breath, her expression softening slightly. I need to think about what's best for Noah, she murmured, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It's not just about you, it's about what he needs. Michael nodded, his heart heavy. I understand, I'll respect whatever you decide, but please, let me at least be introduced to him, just once. She hesitated, glancing over to where Noah played with the other children. Her heart waged a war against her logic, torn between the love she felt for her son and the protective instinct that screamed to keep him safe from further hurt. I'll think about it, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. As she turned to leave, Michael watched her walk away, the weight of their conversation hanging heavily in the air. He could still see Noah laughing, unaware of the turmoil swirling around him. The pang of guilt intensified as he realized that he had missed so much already. In that moment, Michael felt a resolve settle within him. He wouldn't give up. He would do everything in his power to prove himself, to show Sarah and Noah that he was ready to be the father they needed, even if it took time. The road ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of hope. As the event continued around him, Michael stood rooted in place, watching his son with a mix of longing and determination. He had taken the first step, and now he would fight for every moment he could have with Noah, no matter how small. As the final applause of the community event echoed in the air, Michael felt an odd sense of disconnect. The crowd dispersed, yet he remained rooted in place, watching the radiant glow on Noah's face. The boy, with his unruly curls and bright eyes, moved with an effortless grace that belied the struggles he faced. Michael had been a mere spectator, an outsider looking in on a life he had once abandoned, and now he was enveloped by an overwhelming sense of longing and guilt. "Hey there." Noah's voice rang out, bright and cheerful, as he approached Michael, who was still standing near the makeshift stage. The child's innocence struck him like a lightning bolt, igniting a warmth in his chest that he thought had long since gone cold. "I saw you clapping. Did you like my speech?" Michael knelt to meet his son's gaze, momentarily forgetting all the turmoil that had led him here. "I loved it, Noah. You were amazing up there." His voice trembled slightly, infused with an emotion he couldn't quite name. "Thanks." Noah beamed, his smile infectious. "I want to be a superhero when I grow up. Did you know that?" Michael chuckled, a sound that felt foreign yet liberating. "A superhero? That sounds incredible. What kind of superpowers do you want?" With a dramatic flair, Noah raised his arms and declared, "I want to fly and I want to help people, just like the superheroes in the movies." The boy's enthusiasm was palpable, and Michael couldn't help but be drawn into his world, where possibilities were endless and hope reigned supreme. As they spoke, Sarah stood off to the side, her heart twisting in her chest. She had been watching the interaction unfold from a distance, her emotions a tumultuous storm. Anger and resentment battled with a fierce protectiveness for her son. The sight of Noah's joy was a bittersweet reminder of the years lost, and the fear of allowing Michael back into their lives clawed at her insides. "Michael," she finally said, her voice steady yet strained. She stepped forward, the tension palpable as she approached the two. "We need to talk." Noah turned his head, momentarily confused. "Mom, can I show him my art? I painted a picture of a dragon today." Later, sweetheart," Sarah replied gently, though her eyes remained locked on Michael. With a tight smile, she added, "We need to discuss everything." Michael nodded, his heart sinking. "I understand." Noah, sensing the shift in the air, looked between them, his excitement waning. "Okay, I'll be over there." He gestured toward a group of kids playing nearby, his small figure retreating with a hint of confusion shadowing his face. As Noah wandered off, Sarah turned her full attention to Michael, her expression a mixture of fury and hurt. "What are you doing here, Michael? You can't just waltz back into our lives after all this time." "I know," he replied, his voice low and heavy with regret. "I didn't come here to disrupt anything. I wanted to see him. I wanted to be part of his life." "Part of his life?" Sarah laughed bitterly, the sound sharp. "You made your choices. You walked away when he needed you the most. What makes you think you can just show up now?" "I've thought about that day every single day since," Michael admitted, his eyes pleading. "I regret it more than you can imagine. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I was scared and I didn't know how to cope. But Noah, he's incredible. I want to be there for him. I want to be his father." Sarah crossed her arms, her stance defensive. "You don't get to just decide that now. You don't know what it's been like. The sleepless nights, the therapy sessions, the countless times I've had to explain to him why his father isn't around. You don't get to erase all that pain." "I know I can't erase it," Michael replied, his voice trembling with the weight of his emotions. "But I want to help. I want to make things right, if you'll let me." "Let you?" Sarah scoffed, her voice rising with indignation. "What do you expect me to say? Oh, sure, Michael. Come on in. Let's just forget everything." "No," Michael said, his voice firm yet gentle. "I don't expect forgiveness overnight. I just want a chance to show you both that I can be better, that I can be the father Noah deserves." A silence fell between them, thick with tension. Sarah's heart raced as she weighed her options, torn between the desire to protect her son and the flicker of hope that perhaps Michael had changed. "This isn't just about you," she finally said, her voice quieter now. "This is about Noah. He deserves stability, and I won't let you hurt him again." "I understand," Michael replied, desperation creeping into his tone. "I'll prove to you that I'm serious. Just give me a chance to be part of his life." From a distance, Noah's laughter rang out as he played with the other children, the sound a bittersweet reminder of the innocence that hung in the balance. Sarah's resolve wavered as she watched him, her heart aching for her son. "You have no idea what you're asking for." "Then let me learn," Michael urged, stepping closer, his voice earnest. "I want to understand. I want to be there for both of you." Sarah inhaled deeply, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "It won't be easy, Michael. I'm not sure I can trust you again." I'm willing to do whatever it takes, he replied, sincerity radiating from him, even if it means starting from the bottom. I'll prove myself to you, to Noah. Fine, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but this is it. One misstep, and you're out. I won't let you hurt him again. A flicker of hope ignited within Michael, but he knew better than to celebrate just yet. I understand. Thank you, Sarah. I promise you won't regret this. As they stood there, the air thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings, Michael felt a surge of determination. He was ready to face the consequences of his past and forge a new path forward, not just for himself, but for Noah. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to rewrite his story, to be the father he had always wanted to be. Meanwhile, Noah stood a short distance away, oblivious to the emotional turmoil swirling around him. He was busy showing off his latest artwork to a group of friends, his laughter ringing like music. For him, the day was perfect, filled with joy and celebration. Little did he know that his world was shifting, that the man he had just met was not just a stranger, but his father, a fact that would change everything in ways yet unknown. As Noah returned to them, his eyes sparkled with excitement. "Look at my picture," he exclaimed, holding up the colorful drawing of a dragon with all the pride of an artist. "I named him Sparkle. Isn't he cool?" Michael knelt again, leaning closer to examine the artwork. "He's amazing, Noah. You've got a real talent." The boy's joy was infectious, and for a brief moment, Michael felt as if he had been pulled into a world where nothing else mattered but this connection. "Can I show you how to paint too?" Noah asked, his enthusiasm shining through. "Yes, I would love that," Michael replied, feeling warmth envelop his heart. He glanced at Sarah, who watched with a mixture of emotions. Perhaps this was the first step toward a new beginning, one filled with hope and possibility. Michael had never imagined that fatherhood could feel so profound, yet so painful. After years of separation, he found himself cautiously stepping into Noah's world, a vibrant realm filled with crayons, paintbrushes, and the sound of laughter. The walls of his small apartment echoed with regret, but in the presence of his son, there was a flicker of hope. One sunny afternoon, Michael invited Noah to paint with him in the park. As they set up their little art station, the air was filled with the scent of fresh grass and blooming flowers. Noah, with his bright, curious eyes, had a natural talent for capturing the essence of the world around him. Michael watched in awe as Noah's brush danced across the canvas, leaving trails of color and imagination. "Look, Dad, it's a rainbow!" Noah exclaimed, his face lighting up with excitement. He held up his canvas, splattered with vibrant hues. Michael smiled, a warmth spreading through his chest. "It's beautiful, Noah. You've got a real gift." "Can you help me with the clouds?" Noah asked, tilting his head slightly, his hair falling into his eyes. "Of course, let's make them fluffy and big," Michael replied, kneeling beside him. As they painted together, their laughter filled the air, a sweet melody that slowly began to mend the broken threads of their relationship. Meanwhile, Sarah observed from a distance, her heart torn between hope and trepidation. She had seen glimpses of the bond forming between Michael and Noah, and while it brought joy, it also stirred her protective instincts. She approached them, careful to keep her expression neutral. "Noah, sweetheart, it's time for a break. How about we grab some ice cream?" Sarah suggested, her voice gentle yet firm. "Can Dad come?" Noah asked, his eyes wide with anticipation. Sarah hesitated, glancing at Michael. "I suppose if he wants to." Michael felt a rush of gratitude and apprehension at the same time. "I'd love to join you," he said, his voice steady though his heart raced. As they walked toward the ice cream stand, Michael felt a sense of normalcy wash over him, something he thought he had lost forever. Later that evening, they sat in the park, enjoying their ice cream under the fading sun. The conversation flowed easily like a gentle stream. Noah chatted excitedly about his friends at school, the games they played, and the art projects he was working on. Michael listened intently, soaking in every detail, every smile. "Do you think I could be an artist one day?" Noah asked, his eyes sparkling with hope. "Absolutely. You can be anything you want," Michael encouraged, his heart swelling with pride. But just as they began to settle into this newfound dynamic, Michael's phone buzzed violently in his pocket, shattering the moment. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was Jake, his voice urgent on the other end. "Michael, you need to get to the hospital. It's Noah. He's not doing well." Jake's voice trembled with concern. The words hit Michael like a freight train. "What do you mean? What's happening?" he stammered, his heart racing. They're saying there are complications. You need to hurry, Jake urged. Without thinking, Michael stood up abruptly, his ice cream forgotten. I'll be right there, he promised, his heart sinking. He turned to Sarah, his face pale. I have to go. It's Noah. Wait, what's going on? Sarah asked, concern etched on her features. Noah's in the hospital. Jake just called, Michael replied, feeling the panic rise in his throat. Is he okay? Sarah's voice wavered, a mix of fear and disbelief. I don't know, Michael admitted, his breath quickening. But I need to find out. He sprinted to his car, the world around him blurring as he drove, his mind racing with dread. Images of Noah's laughter and their painted canvases flashed before his eyes. How could this be happening? After all the years of regret, after finally taking steps to be a father, was he about to lose everything again? As he arrived at the hospital, the sterile smell of antiseptic assaulted his senses. Michael rushed through the corridors, his heart pounding in his chest, each beat echoing the fear that clawed at his insides. He reached the ICU, his breath coming in ragged gasps. What room is he in? Michael asked a nurse, desperation spilling from his voice. Room 302, she replied, her expression sympathetic but detached. He bolted down the hallway, the fluorescent lights flickering above him as he approached the door. The harsh reality of the situation crashed over him, and he hesitated for a moment, his hand hovering over the handle. Pushing the door open, Michael stepped inside, and what he saw shattered his heart. Noah lay in the hospital bed, tubes snaking around his small frame, his face pale and still. The beeping of machines filled the room, a mechanical reminder of the fragility of life. Noah? Michael whispered, his voice barely audible. He stepped closer, wanting to reach out to hold his son, but felt paralyzed by the sight before him. A doctor entered, her expression grave. Mr. Anderson, I'm sorry to inform you that Noah's condition has worsened. We're doing everything we can, but he's very weak. Michael's world tilted, and he felt a suffocating weight settle on his chest. No, this can't be happening, he stammered, tears welling in his eyes. Is there anyone else you would like us to call? The doctor asked gently. Michael shook his head, his heart breaking. I'm all he has, he's all I have, he choked out. The realization struck him like a blow. He had wasted so much time, and now he was losing the chance to be the father Noah needed. As he sat by Noah's bedside, he held his small, frail hand, the warmth fading beneath his touch. I'm so sorry, buddy. I should have been here. I should have done better, he murmured, regret seeping into every word. Noah's eyelids fluttered, and for a moment it seemed as if he might open his eyes and smile at his father once more. Dad, he whispered, his voice barely a breath. Michael leaned in closer, desperate to catch every word. I'm here, Noah. I'm right here. But the machines around him began to beep more frantically, and the doctor rushed back in. We need to stabilize him, she said urgently. Michael watched helplessly as the medical team began working frantically, his heart shattering into a million pieces. The realization hit him hard. He had abandoned Noah when he needed him the most, and now as he faced the possibility of losing him forever, he was left with nothing but his regret. As the commotion swirled around him, Michael felt a deep emptiness settle within him. He had missed so much. Noah's laughter, his triumphs, his struggles. And now he was losing the chance to be part of his life altogether.